for the heavy stuff, and then we'll be a little bit back and forth Friday and Saturday. But the sooner we can get over there, the better. So looks like we're coming in hot. We're live. Looks like we're getting the thumbs up from John. I think we're still waiting for one more. There it is. There's a double thumbs up. All right,
boom, boom,
Tuesday
boom.
for the Mile High Insiders. I got the right hat on, right? That's okay.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
It's Mile High Insiders. That's right. Let's get it going. Luke, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm pumped to be here. I was just talking to you and John behind the scenes. Dude, I'm pumped to be here on a Tuesday, subbing in for Carl on what would normally be a building the Broncos. And no, you guys have always had my back when I've had something going on. So very appreciative of Carl and you for having me on tonight. But dude, it's the season of lies, the season of news, the season of rumors, and we have got some hot info and rumors to talk about regarding the quarterback position in your Denver Broncos. So dude, I am pumped. How are you doing, dude? Tuesday night, man.
Yeah, Tuesday night. Always enjoy coming in and talking football. I got to haul my rear end from my site in Seattle, and hopefully the traffic's never bad. I take the I-5 up, and there's always an accident. Gosh darn, Seattle drivers, guys. What are you guys doing? No, I'm happy to be here. Happy to have you on. And, it is lion season. You mentioned that earlier, but also like it's all like the best season too, right? Like everything is BS or like it's not BS, but we're still going to talk about it because it's fun, right? Like, if you believe it or not, it's fun. Just enjoy it for the entertainment factor.
I see that we're already getting called out by some folks,
no.
and I love it. Corey, appreciate you coming in. Corey Broncos coming in. Can't put it up there because of the profanity, but appreciate you joining MHI. And I see some of our dear friends like Dylan. I see Travis Bruley in the house, Anthony Cordova, Kevin Broncos Vines coming in with the yo. Ernie Mays is in the house, always one of our first, and want to continue to say hello to Broncos country throughout the rest of the night because Nick, as you know, we got Broncos country all over the world, man. That's something that was really important to me in our show last Saturday night. And I could see we've got a gentleman from Homer, Alaska in the house already. We got Stu McPeak in the house. And, man, we've got a great show lined up. But before we get there, Nick, we got to talk about our presenting sponsor, which is, of course, Manscaped. So before we get to the heart of our show, listen, 2020, it sucked. But get this. It's 2021 now, which means it's time to embrace the new year, new me mindset. And the best way to start cultivating that is with Manscaped. Now, listen up, fellas. Manscaped is the best in men's below the waist grooming, offering precision engineered tools for your family jewels and helping 2 million men around the world keep their male grooming on point. So if you let yourself go in 2020 while in quarantine, Manscaped is here for you to reboot, stay clean, and stay shaven in 2021.
Yeah, guys, I've been in the midst of a move here, moving just down the way in Seattle to a different neighborhood, having to get out of this rental, move into a new one, only here for a little bit. But, it gets hot. You're moving boxes around, packing stuff up. Well, that can be an issue for the boys downstairs. Don't get me started. I'm not going to show you guys here today, but the Manscaped anti-chafing boxer briefs are pretty much everything you'd need. They're great. They also have the crop mop, the ball wipes, which, if you're sweating below the belt, those are great for you to get. So, gosh, they have great products. And obviously, the Lawnmower 3.0, the crown jewel for Manscaped.
And speaking of the Lawnmower 3.0, guys, this thing will get you to come out of quarantine well-groomed below the waist, and that is, of course, with the Lawnmower 3.0. Now, this waterproof and skin-safe trimmer will reduce nicks to your two best little friends. The third-generation trimmer even has a light to illuminate those hard-to-see spots in 2021. Now, Manscaped, they've even thrown in their Shed travel bag to keep all your goodies stored very comfortably. And speaking of comfort, the Manscaped anti-chafing boxer briefs are also included and are hands down the best underwear that you will ever wear. So 2020, it was awful. Make sure that your boys and your body's refreshed and ready for new beginnings in 2021. So embrace that new year, new me mindset with Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE at manscaped.com. Your family jewels will thank you.
Yeah, guys, that's right. With the first overall pick, Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE at manscaped.com. Once again, that's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com if you use the code HUDDLE. Hopefully nobody's brackets were busted last night, but even worse than a busted bracket are busted balls. And you can avoid that if you use Manscaped.
I absolutely love it, man. And I love the chat. I'm just trying to stay alert and stay on my toes here. And I can see that we got a good crowd here tonight. So definitely want to get to you guys. But before we do, I want to say hello to a few more folks. We got Aaron Turner in the house. Sup from Perth, Australia. We got Broncos country down under, Nick. That is pretty cool to see.
Down under brought to you by Manscaped.
Yeah, we've got Profit coming in with you and Nick are awesome. You guys keep up the good work. We greatly appreciate that. And thank you for joining MHI tonight on your Tuesday night. And Nick, the draft is right around the corner. It feels like each day that passes, more and more rumors and more news comes out. And I don't know about you, but my anxiety level's through the roof right now just because of the Denver Broncos and not knowing what direction they're going to go at number 9 if they stay at number 9.
Yeah, are they going to stay at 9? I think right now I would be pretty confident either they're trading up or they're trading down. Staying at 9 seems like the least likely option of the three. Trading up for a quarterback or trading down, gathering assets, and trying to fill out the rest of this roster. Because, I mean, for where the Broncos are picking at 9, odds are it's not really going to be a position they really need, and unless you and I obviously disagree on Micah Parsons, and that's great. It's good content. That's fine. But that's one. It also sounds like the Broncos aren't as high on him. Also, from what I've heard, now people could hear other things, but from a culture standpoint, but 9 moving up, moving down. If they move up though, things yesterday moved away where the Broncos, their chances for moving up, I think, increased ever so slightly because one of the biggest competitors for moving up into 4 or 5 got their quarterback. Carolina trades for Sam Darnold. So who knows what's going to happen with the Broncos, but I do think the odds increased ever so slightly, and I think there's a chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance? I feel like Dumb and Dumber right there. Lloyd Christmas. Yeah, it's bizarre, Nick, because we don't know if George Payton and the Denver Broncos have fallen in love with a quarterback. We know that they've been looking. We know that they want to upgrade from Drew Lock. We don't know that they hate Drew Lock, something that we're constantly accused of being, Drew Lock haters. So I want to get that out of the way right now. We hate Drew Lock. But no,
don't put me in a box.
It's one of those things, man, where I'm not going to say or try to predict that George Payton loves Drew Lock, but if he sees an opportunity to upgrade the quarterback position with a possible quarterback sitting there at number 4, if the Falcons or 5, it's just bizarre circumstances because it feels like now that we're getting closer and closer to the draft, Nick, the heat is on. Atlanta is out there. They made it very publicly known today, and just ask anyone who's not living under a rock that they're shopping the pick. The phones are open. Hey, tell us what you got. And I can't help but think that the Broncos are definitely calling and wanting to at least inquire. Now, George Payton said we would be in on every deal. Whether or not we pull the trigger, that depends. What do you make of it? What have you heard? And the Broncos, the Falcons, are they communicating?
I have not heard that the Broncos and Falcons are communicating, but I'm guessing they have. I mean, it sounds like the Sam Darnold stuff started to accumulate at the Ohio State Pro Day when Justin Fields was throwing, and the Carolina was like, okay, well, we're not getting to 4. We're not getting into the top 4, so maybe it's time to start looking elsewhere. So and Atlanta's not trading with Carolina. That would be like the Broncos trading with the Raiders to give them their quarterback of the future, right? Like it's just not happening. So that trade was made. So I think there is some smoke there. I have heard the Broncos have engaged in talks with Cincinnati at 5. I have not heard with Atlanta at 4, but it would be crazy if they weren't, right? They're looking at, not to steal from Elway, right? But shaking all the trees, looking underneath every rock for quarterbacks, right? They were in on Stafford. They were in on Watson before everything kind of fell apart there. They were in on, a lot of people were saying they had interest in Dak Prescott if he was going to be available. They apparently made calls about Teddy Bridgewater already. They were in on Sam Darnold. So they're looking for quarterback. Now, does that mean that they're done with Drew Lock? No, but in the very least, they're looking to upgrade and potentially even or bring in competition at the very least, but they could also be looking to upgrade the position as well.
That's one thing that I absolutely love is when people start attacking other people about things that they've heard, because it's like, well, that's not true. It's like, well, we don't know if any of it's true. We have to wait and find out, and some of it we'll never know. So it's just that season of lies, man, and that's part of the draft. And this stuff gets put out there for reasons too, and the manipulation of the draft. And it's crazy because it's a game that you and I love, but it's all about how do we get that upper hand? How do we try to get one up on the opponent? And speaking of getting one up on the opponent, we're always able to get one up on our opponent with the support of folks like Gary Palmer coming in with you guys are killing it. Denver Broncos for life, state of being. Thank you very much, Gary, and good evening on your Tuesday night. And appreciate you joining MHI. But that's going to lead us into a super right away from Andy. $10 super chat. Appreciate you so much, Mr. Andy Cowhick, coming in the house. If they trade to 4, who would you rather have still be there between Lance and Fields? The way I see it, Justin Fields would be better on day 1. but Lance having a higher potential ceiling. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Nick, what do you make of Andy's question? I really like it. I tend to agree with him. Lance and Fields. That's who I think it could be. Mac Jones will be there. That name, it's weird to see it connected with San Francisco, and we can fight yay or nay on that all we want. But I love Andy's question here, Nick. I absolutely love it. It's crucial. It matters. It's important, and it's cutting straight to the heart of Broncos country.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a cliche, but I think it's one that's good. It's like, what's your favorite type of ice cream, right? Like, do you like Rocky Road? You like Moose Tracks? Cookie dough? That's kind of what I'm getting here with Lance and Fields. Personally, given where we sit, we don't have the access where we're talking to these guys, sitting them down on a whiteboard, talking with the coaches, et cetera, where we can't get down to that level of detail. So I'm going to go with the guy who I view as safer, that I know better. Because I've two years of tape playing high competition, been the guy since high school, right? Like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. But if somebody was like, listen, we like Fields, we love Lance, I'm all in, right? Like I could go either way. It would not take hardly anything for me to sway one way or the other because I like them both that much.
I don't know if I'm going to surprise you or not, but I think I love Trey Lance now. It's not just it's not just a like thing. Can you believe that? Like, I think I'm there. I think I'm finally there. So what does that mean? I'm not a big Justin Fields guy, right? But I like Justin Fields now. So if the Broncos traded up and got Justin Fields, would I be excited? Hell yeah, I'd be excited. The Broncos would be drafting a quarterback in the first round, which hasn't happened since, God forbid we say his name, Paxton Lynch. You can't be so shy and so afraid to make a mistake. And George Payton, he's doing his homework and, dodging Mac Jones at the Senior Bowl, at the Pro Day and everything else. So it's just bizarre. The whole timing, the rumors, you see mock drafts. I wrote about it on myhighhuddle.com talking about, what does Kuiper think? What does McShay think? What does Daniel Jeremiah think? And then you see a lot of positions, especially not the quarterback, being attached to the Broncos, Nick. You see a Penei Sewell being attached to the Broncos. You see Patrick Surtain. You see Micah Parsons. And it starts to give you some caution. But I got to tell you, I'm getting the feeling from Broncos country, if the Broncos don't pick a quarterback, there's going to be some disappointment.
I mean, I would be somewhat disappointed just because what I think of the top 4 quarterbacks in this class and how close they are. And I think, this thought of like, oh, the Broncos can trade back and then punt on quarterback this year if Drew Lock fails. Like that's way better in theory than in practice, right? Like you see teams this year where they desperately need quarterback, but they're out of range, right? They're out of range. Broncos are picking at 9 right now. If the Bears were picking at 9, do you think they sign Andy Dalton for $10 million a year? No. If the Washington football team were picking at 9, do you think they would have signed Ryan Fitzpatrick? No. Like maybe the Steelers play hardball with Big Ben. If that's the conversation where this Broncos roster is good enough, they could, weekend at Bernie's, Drew Lock to a 8-win season, right? Like that's how good they are. Like kind of what you saw with Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky. If you're going to go for a young quarterback, it's now. Otherwise, the options next year are a dice roll with a late first-round pick. You have way lower odds than a top 10 pick, or maybe bringing on somebody like Matt Ryan or Kirk Cousins, which, okay, maybe with a good roster, you can do that. But if you're going to pay that price already, you're sitting at 9, go up and get a guy. The time is now. Like if you're going to do it, the time is now.
If you're going to do it, the time is now. I absolutely love it. We just don't know what George Payton's thinking. That's the craziest thing. And he's keeping that building very, very tightly sealed, Nick. Not able to get a lot of info. It's crazy. I like it in a way, and in another way, it just drives me nuts because I don't know what this man's going to do, and everybody's waiting, trying to read and gauge the temperature of the room. And it's really hard to do, but we've got Tom El Greco in the house tonight on Tuesday from Mile High Insiders with a $5 super chat donation. Thank you very much for your support, Tom, and good evening. Now, Tom's saying, just a reminder on Drew's QBR in the last 6 games. If he was in the top 5, thanks, guys. So it looks like Tom's wanting to talk a little bit about Drew's QBR in the last 6 games, Nick. This is a question, Tom, that we actually talked about before the show started. Bawana Beast was talking to me about it. We talked to Nick about it. And Nick, you were able to share a little bit of a visual aid, I think, with John that we're going to try to pop up here in a second that is a very nice visual aid to help answer this question.
Yeah, and you might as well make it full screen, John, if you have the ability, just because some of it is so small. I mean, you can even take my beautiful face off the screen for a second if you want. But as you guys can see there, I don't have the QBR information and I don't have a good graphic tool to display that as well as this one. But what I do have is EPA per play, which is expected points added per play, as well as completion percentage over expected. On the left is EPA per play, on the bottom is completion percentage over expected. Now, this data shows that while Drew Lock played better down the stretch last year, he was, a bottom 10-ish quarterback, bottom 12. He played some. This is also not standardized for the defenses that they played. Broncos played, I think, 5 bottom 10 defenses over the last 7 games of the season. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But the biggest thing here is this is a stat that's haunted Drew Lock for a while. While his EPA per play, as you can see on the left here, is now, we're getting really nerdy today. I love it, man. Football analytics. This is cutting edge stuff. But on the left here, you have EPA per play. Lock does better there, but where he tends to struggle, and this has been the case through his whole career, this was the case in college as well, is the CPOE, or completion percentage over expected. Now, what is CPOE? It's a very popular next-gen stat where they use the likelihood of a given pass to be completed at the time it's thrown, averages of all those throws expected percentages, and then subtracts that from the actual completion percentage of a player for each game. So essentially, it takes all the throws that has been thrown to a certain spot at a certain time that's ever been accumulated, and puts what the quarterback that you're assessing is as the numerator, and then you get the CPOE, so completion percentage over expected. The expected would be the average. And Drew Lock, time and time again, really, really, really low CPOE. Now, that could be because of processing issues. That could be because mechanical issues where, causes bad accuracy, but that
could
CPOE
be because he under the ball way too long. For the love of God, get rid of it.
Yeah, it's just one that he struggles with tremendously. He was also one of the worst in that college class in 2019, and that mediocre milquetoast quarterback class that was 2019 outside of Kyler Murray. And it's one that's been an issue here as well. So you see people talk about the accuracy with Lock. Well, where's the data that kind of shows that? It's the CPOE. And he actually, there are worse quarterbacks here, as you can see, over that time span. But it's not great. And you have Justin Herbert right there too, right? But then Justin Herbert, higher EPA per play, and this is not taking in standardized measurements for the defenses they're playing, right? Like Broncos playing, let's say they play 3 bottom 5 defenses over the stretch. Numbers are going to be different than playing great defenses. It just is what it is. And also, this unfortunately does not include the Broncos, Drew Lock himself, going up against the New Orleans Saints, which had the number 1 run defense in football. Would have been interesting to see what Drew Lock could have done when the Melvin Gordon, who was a top 5 running back down the stretch last year when Drew Lock was playing better, if he was neutralized and they had to rely on Drew Lock, because that was not the case down the stretch last year.
I want to come in with this real quick, just because I absolutely love it. Stony Neff coming in saying, you guys are nerds. Why don't you just look at John Elway and Peyton Manning's first 16 games? Lock is better. And the reason I bring that up is because we are nerds. First and foremost, and I absolutely love it. But
nerds are running football, man. Sorry.
Yeah,
it used to get left behind.
Well, and analytics, it's the year of analytics. Just ask George Payton. Whether Vic Fangio likes it or not, it's here. And by not utilizing some of these tools, we've seen how a franchise can suffer. Now, no, I'm not saying that's the only reason why the Broncos are where they are, but Nick, we hear time and time again, but Josh Allen didn't do this, didn't do that. Josh Allen, Drew Lock, Josh Allen. Talk a little bit about the comparisons that we see, because I think it's fair to compare Broncos quarterbacks to each other. So while I understand the Peyton Manning and John Elway reference, talk a little bit about that common comparison between Josh Allen and Drew Lock, and those that believe the philosophy or support the philosophy, rather, that Drew Lock can take that next jump, very similar to Bills quarterback Josh Allen.
Well, I guess there's a path where Drew Lock could take a jump, but you're not going to see him jump to the lengths that Josh Allen did. And if he did, it would be in a bigger anomaly than what we saw with Josh Allen this past year. I would not bet on that. And it's kind of like the same thing where, like, oh, look at what Josh Allen did. Well, let's take a quarterback in the 6th round. He could be Tom Brady. Like, the trends do not line up that way. It's not likely to happen. So also, a thing that's very disingenuous with this Josh Allen versus Drew Lock conversation is Josh Allen might be the best red zone weapon, short yardage weapon in football, right? Like, he adds an entirely different element to your offense because he is so good with the ball in his hands and he can score touchdowns. And that's something where the NFL is actually, more teams are running match quarters than you've seen ever before. Thank you, Vic Fangio. You're kind of changing the game with the the defensive side of the ball there in the NFL. But because of that, it's harder for teams to score in the red zone in comparison to moving the football. So getting a quarterback that can be a weapon in the red zone, that's a difference maker for to be able to score touchdowns rather than, running out of gas when you get in the red zone. So a quarterback like that, Josh Allen, destroys Drew Lock as far as athleticism running the football. Also, Josh Allen has, as good as Drew Lock's arm is, which is probably top 15, top 10 as far as pure raw arm talent, Josh Allen's number one. I know Patrick Mahomes is good, but he does not have the arm talent that Josh Allen has. That's another thing. And the other thing is, it's the contract that he has. 5 years versus 4 years. Josh Allen, he had 3 years left when he took this leap. Drew Lock only has 2 years left right now, right? They have the same amount of time left on their contract. So you have, just by how the contracts are set up, less time. I'm sorry. That's just is what it is. You have less time to take advantage of that contract. So I don't know. I don't like the conversation. I think it's disingenuous, and it's kind of like going to the gas station. You're starving, but instead of buying something that's nutritious and filling your stomach, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna buy the scratcher. It's just not a good process.
That's like the Eddie Murphy, right? Let's give a starving man the cracker bit, where it's like it's the best thing you've ever tasted in your life, and it's just that's kind of where we're at. But one thing that really Stu Mead in the house, a huge friend and supporter of the show at the 299 Super. Appreciate you so much, Stu. Hope you're doing well. Love the shades. I'm a huge sunglass guy, so any sunglass that I see, I try to show it some respect and some love. So appreciate you, Stu. But Nick, one thing that I wanted to note with the Josh Allen and the Drew Lock thing is Josh Allen, didn't he come in rushing for like 600 yards too? I mean, we're seeing all these comments. He's more physical. He's more dominant. Absolutely. And you and I have talked ad nauseum about how the profile, the actual quarterback profile of these two men are completely different. They don't compare well. Now, one might be swaggy and the other's actually confident. And a friend of the show, Dylan Von Arx, had come in here and said, look, we got to see Josh Allen actually mature and start to improve. And his improvement and processing is very well documented with Jordan Palmer. And you got to see Jordan Palmer and Drew Lock work out in Missouri. So hating since day one, I'd just like to say. But no, man,
I'll take that back. I was not hating since day one with Drew Lock. I thought that Drew Lock was worth taking, in the first round, but we're 2 years in because he had the tools, right? But we're 2 years in. We've collected data. We see what he is. And it's not as much. Let's flip it. Let's say the Broncos are in the Bears situation right now, picking, 19? Mm-hmm. I would not be as, darned screaming to go up for a quarterback because the cost would be almost impossible, right? It's an opportunity cost. You're picking at 9. Like, I don't think it's the worst process to roll with Lock another year. I don't think he can be a great quarterback, but he can be in that 11 to 25 range, which with a good roster can go far. But it's more about how good I think the top quarterbacks are in this class and how close you are. And if you can get one and reset the quarterback contract, you got a chance to make some noise. You really do. And they're not perfect by no means, but like I would reset that contract and go for that guy with higher upside and be able to build a better roster around them. Because this team is ready to go now.
Go where?
Go far. I mean, gosh, I think
playoffs, postseason.
I think you could plug in any of these top 4 rookie quarterbacks, even Trey Lance, who is not as raw as people say, and they could go to the playoffs. I mean, it's 17.
Pat Shurmur's offense, and an offense where he will not bend. He will not, Nick, for the love of everything that's mighty. He won't. And that's what makes me nervous because I don't want Pat Shurmur anywhere near my rookie quarterback. And I find it a bit disingenuous, a bit odd. I don't know the word for it, that we're seeing Shula with, traveling with George Payton and not Pat Shurmur. And what do you make of that? I mean, because I think Pat Shurmur's ultimately gone after this year. I think the same could be said with Vic Fangio. I know we defer on that. And I asked the question today on Twitter, look, would a rookie quarterback buy Vic Fangio time? And I guess that's a question I'd like to at least ask you and open it up to the chat line here, because I think it might. It really might. Now, I'm not going to say that the Broncos would be postseason ready, but I think they would probably have a better chance with a rookie quarterback than Drew Lock. And that's not me being a hater.
It's the biggest thing is turnovers, right? Like Lock is one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. Just is what it is. Now, there's issues. There are reasons for that, but he's struggled. And if the Broncos can get a quarterback in here who is not throwing into the other team, the defense and the weapons around them can lead them to a playoff berth. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that this team is going to overtake the Chiefs with a rookie quarterback this season, but 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line while you're still have a cost controlled quarterback instead of having to pay Drew Lock or go to the market and pay a Case Keenum type, that's when you have a chance. And that's what the window needs to be. Perspective shouldn't be 2021. It should be what 2021 can build into. And I'm sorry, like we know as much, well, probably, how do I put this? Drew Lock is still an unknown after 2 seasons. We only have 2 years left, right? These other quarterbacks are unknowns too, with better ceilings, and you have longer time periods to figure it out. So that's the biggest thing for me. I would reset now. If they trade back and Drew Lock is the guy this year and he can develop into a top 20, 15 to 20 quarterback-ish range, I would be okay with that on the rookie quarterback contract. Now, I think that has a terminal point where I'm not paying him, right? Like I'm like, okay, I'll Kirk Cousins him to death. Like, okay, I'll take the comp pick for you when you move on. But that's the issue. Like, I just don't think that he goes to a point where he's worth paying that contract.
You said it's about turnovers, and you're exactly right. And one of our good friends, Mohammed Badri, in the house with a $2 super. Hey, you. What's up, Mo? Appreciate you. And much love to you and your family on this Tuesday night. Thanks for joining the MHI show, subbing in for Building the Broncos. And no, that's one thing you said about Drew Lock and asked the question, can he develop? It's a very important question, but he doesn't have time. And I'm sorry, like time's up, dude. And it's nothing personal. It never is. It's the league, like Big Alfred Williams used to always say, it's the league, man. Let it rip. And it's true. You're either going to put out or you're going to be out. And Drew Lock could be looking at, if the Broncos draft a quarterback, Nick, Drew Lock is the backup. I don't foresee them getting rid of Drew Lock. I know everybody likes to say, oh, you could just trade Drew Lock to Detroit. That's done. That's played out. Yeah. It didn't happen. I think it almost happened, and you think it almost happened too. And anyone that doesn't, I think is just needs to come back to reality for just a second. But Drew Lock doesn't have time, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get John Houston's back up here because he's a friend of the show. And sorry, we got a little bit negative there. Johnny's rocking the Jay Cutler picture there, it looks like. But John Houston, friend of the show, should change the name. Smoking Jay there, actually. Yeah, good call, John. The cigarette is very small there, but he's rocking it.
Good to see you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John. Should change the name of the show with you two to the Daily Dissect of how bad Drew Lock is and how all the quarterbacks in this draft are flawless Hall of Fame. Well, these quarterbacks do have flaws. All of them do. But there's a reason Drew Lock fell to the second round, and he struggled the past 2 seasons. And there's a reason that this draft class, it sounds like quarterbacks going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 for the first time in history. So, if the Broncos go with Drew Lock this year, there are avenues to success. But I think the best avenue to success is going up and getting one of the top quarterbacks in this class. And that's just my opinion. You can disagree. God bless you for it.
John, absolutely love the super chat. Love the comment. Thank you so much for inviting us into your football brain. Here's my thing, man. You can go back and look it up. Years ago, I wrote for a different publication, and I wanted the Broncos to draft Drew Lock in round 1. Can you imagine how upset I'd be now if they did that? But John Elway pounded the table for Drew Lock in round 1. I pounded the table, and then when we got him, dude, after Reisner, I was freaking out. I was so happy. So Drew Lock hater since day one, absolutely. But here's the thing, John. You just got to realize that this is just a quarterback-driven league, and if it's not the move you or I would do, that doesn't matter. If the 49ers shock the world and take Mac Jones, my jaw is going to be on the floor, Nick.
Please.
It's going to be on the floor because that's going to open up a whole new world, right? I feel like, what's that Disney movie? A Whole New World, right?
Aladdin.
Aladdin. There you go. A whole new world could open up like the genie opened up to Aladdin and said, hey, dude, what's your wish? Well, George Payton's wish could be a quarterback. And with that, Malcolm Brown coming in with a $2 super. Appreciate you joining the show, Malcolm, and good evening. Nick, who is the most overrated quarterback in the draft?
Oh, this is an excellent question.
It's a hard question.
It is a hard question. Honestly, I still think he's an incredible talent and should go number 1 overall. But is Trevor Lawrence somewhat overrated? All these things that we're talking about with questions about Justin Fields, the type of offense he's running, holding on to the ball, one read offense. All this applies to Trevor Lawrence too, right? We've seen him do things, and I think he's much quicker in the pocket and making decisions. But there are questions. It's not like Trevor Lawrence doesn't have flaws. His accuracy. I don't know why we harp on Justin Fields' Indiana and Northwestern game this year. Go back and watch the LSU Clemson game from 2 years ago. Lawrence was just missing guys left and right. The tools are still there. He's still number 1 overall pick, but there are flaws with him. I think Zach Wilson also is another guy. He's number 2 overall without question. I think there's an argument to be made for Trey Lance or Justin Fields at 2. Zach Wilson, he's a guy who pushes the ball and not always shouldn't be. I don't think he has actually as good of an arm talent as those other guys. I think that also, what does he do under pressure, right? Like the BYU offensive line this year was really good, and they went up against almost nobody as far as pass rushers. The only game where we saw any good pass rush was Coastal Carolina, and guess what? Zach Wilson was just okay. So they're all really good quarterbacks. I think they all deserve to go 1, 2, 3, 4. But I think it's actually more of a conversation. I've been on this boat because I've been watching these guys all year. In November, I'm like, you know what? There are 4 quarterbacks in this class that I love. I would have no argument slotting them either way. I still think Trevor Lawrence is number 1 because of the tools. It comes back to the tools. But I don't know, man. I think that Lawrence and Wilson being slotted 1 or 2 without a doubt, I don't see it that way. I think there's an argument for all 4 of the top guys. That's how much I like them. And that's why I'm such a big fan of going up for Trey Lance or is it Justin Fields. I think they're all equally chance of being the guy in this class and end up being the best quarterback from this draft class.
It's a great question, Malcolm. I absolutely love it. For me, I'm going to go Mac Jones, and I'm a guy that likes Mac Jones, Nick. Liked him since I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and I like him now, but I don't like him any more than I liked him then. I said he would be the 5th quarterback off the board in the first round, and people were like, "What, Mac Jones?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Mac Jones." And he doesn't have a weak arm. He doesn't have an elite arm. He's intellectually ready to be in the NFL, but I find it interesting that you see like Chris Sims, who's friends with Kyle Shanahan, right? They've got tattoos together. It's just the way they rank quarterbacks. I find it very interesting. So I'm starting to wonder about San Francisco and Mac Jones. If it were me, I would take Mac Jones more towards the end of the first round. I don't see him as that upper quarterback talent level. And even though I don't love Justin Fields, I still put Justin Fields up there with Trey Lance, and then the other tier would probably be Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. So even if you don't love Justin Fields, even if you don't love Trey Lance, recognize their abilities and recognize what they could do, because I would love it if they worked out. And speaking of working out, Glenn Hauser always working out for us and always working hard to support our show. $4.99 super. Appreciate you, Glenn. Why are some fans fine with shoring up all other positions, but quarterback is off limits? If Drew Lock is the guy, won't he beat out whomever comes in this year?
I mean, you know what? I go back and you see the same kind of conversations every single year about fans supporting their guys, supporting the team. You know, people thought Trevor Siemian was going to be it after that Cincinnati game. Paxton Lynch was drafted early. You know, he's going to be the guy getting Case Keenum, Joe Flacco. That's why I'm always like pump the brakes and try to take a 1,000-foot view if you can. What are the non-Denver people saying about these quarterbacks? And that's a different case. I feel like the Denver market is the only one right now where they're actually taking Drew Lock seriously. And I think compared to the national media, I'm taking Drew Lock more seriously than what a lot of the national media says. They're very just like, oh, the Broncos roster is good, but their quarterback position, they're not going to do anything. I think the Broncos can do something with Drew Lock. I think there's still a tangible upside with Drew Lock. But, if you have a chance to upgrade the position, or at least bring in competition in the very least, like we opened the show, you have to look at it, because even a marginal upgrade at the quarterback position is huge. Like if you go from a D-level tackle to an A-level tackle, I don't think that's going to make as much of a difference on your football team as going from a C-level quarterback to a B-level quarterback, because that quarterback is that impactful and valuable for what a game can, game to game, and what the influence on the game is.
Well, and Drew Lock's a likable guy.
No, absolutely.
People want him to succeed. No one wants to see him fail. And Glenn, that's a really good question. I appreciate that. Thanks for the support. I think Drew definitely wants to improve. The want to is there. I don't think he's lazy. I think he can be a little arrogant at times, but I also think the same of Jerry Jeudy. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with an arrogant quarterback, but you just got to back it up. Whether or not Drew Lock's going to do that or have the opportunity, we will find out. But Jake King coming in with a $4.99 super chat. Appreciate you so much, Jake. Thank you for joining MHI. Nick, if we trade back, and I'm going to butcher this name because I always do. Go for it, Nick. Come on.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it. I was going to say yes or no. Ojulari.
Ojulari from Georgia is there. Do you think there would be any consideration for him, or are there too many other bigger needs?
If you're trading back, edge rusher is probably one of the most important positions you could target there, because if you're trading back, especially in the back end of the first round, how much of an impact is that guy actually going to make? I know that we all like, the third round pick, we're going to get this guy, but you need to look at these draft picks from a scope, especially outside of the top 10, of what they're going to do year 2, year 3, year 4. I mean, Jason Licht of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they make their draft board specifically for what the players are going to do 2 to 3 years down the road. They don't give a hoot about what their projection is year one, because that's typically what rookies are. And I mean, they had some bad drafts early, but they really got it together the last few years. So I think edge rusher is one of the positions that if the Broncos trade back, 100%, that's actually the top of my board in a trade back scenario, because Bradley Chubb is going to get paid soon. He is really talented. He is good. And I think he's not going to be Von Miller, but I think he's got all pro potential. And Von Miller is going to be 33 this year. If you want to keep the defense good, you need to invest in pass rushers, because that's what Vic wants to do. He doesn't want to blitz. He wants to rush 4, drop 7. And the best way to do that is to continually use premium resources on edge rushers on the defensive line. So I think trading back Ojulari I'd like a lot. Jason Owa is a good option.
Yep.
Jalen Phillips from Miami is a good option. Kwity Paye. Those are the top 4 guys. So we'll see.
Love me some Kwity Paye. Loved him since day one. Had him in my original list of, what was it, 5 guys, 4 guys, something like that, way back in another world of what feels like years ago. And here we are, just weeks away from the NFL draft. And keep the takes coming. Absolutely love it. Keeping an eye on the chat. We've got Bawana on the 1s and 2s. Keeping an eye on the chat as well. Nick, one thing I'm seeing a lot of in the chat right now is argument pros and cons for Justin Fields. All right, let's say it happens. Justin Fields comes to the Broncos. I know you're psyched. You're pumped. We're all doing the draft coverage. Everyone's thrilled. Would he be the starter day one?
I would think so. I think you could still see kind of a smaller move in tandem with that, where you bring in somebody like an Alex Smith or maybe Teddy Bridgewater's release, because nobody wants him at what is it, $18 million cap hit? Terrible. Like, why would I pay $18 million for Teddy Bridgewater and give up assets for him? Stupid. Not happening.
I like Drew Lock over Teddy all day.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if Teddy Bridgewater was released, I could bring in Teddy to compete with Lock, right? Like, that's something that's, again, biggest thing is it comes back to turnovers. But was $18 million against the cap and having to give up draft assets? Miss me with that. It's not happening. I'm not doing it. But I think Justin Fields definitely could start day one. And I mean, Cam Newton came into the league pretty darn raw, right? Like, he had that really good run with Auburn that one year, but he was playing community college ball the year before that and drafted #1 overall. And then he goes on to win Rookie of the Year under, you guessed it, Broncos quarterback coach Mike Shula. So I definitely think there's a path and an avenue for a Justin Fields or bending it, a Trey Lance to start day one in this offense. And if you can't make it work in the era where quarterbacks are coming in and the offenses are as friendly as ever, you got the wrong guy calling the shots from the offensive schematic side.
Speaking of calling shots, I'm going to take my shot right now. I've been saving up for it. Ready?
I'm ready.
Weren't there character concerns with Cam Newton coming out of the draft?
He stole a laptop, right? He chalked it out of like the 4th floor of an apartment building, got kicked off of Florida, and then he ended up going to community college route. So yes, there were character concerns. Just saying. And of course, like,
and
are you taking this back to Micah Parsons? Because I would say
I'm taking it back to any prospect, because each scenario is different. But like, one thing that I just do have a little bit of an axe to grind is just like, everybody coming at, the Justin Fields comments made by Dan Orlovsky, which I'm still trying to get over because it's bizarre.
He got played like a fiddle. That coming from New England or somebody like that. Please push Justin Fields down.
One thing I really respect about you and a lot of the other writers on our staff is we don't take shots at the players in the draft because it hurts their reputation. It really does. Now, we can like a player, we can not like a player, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to just come out and say, here's 10 players I hate. I think that same damage that can be done is also being done to Micah Parsons, or at least the potential could be there. With character concerns, that's something the NFL teams certainly dive into. But Nick, I'm telling you, I know that it's a concern of yours. I hear it. But is it a concern for teams? Because we know teams don't necessarily have Boy Scouts playing. So it's tough. It's shaky ground, because you're right. There are tons of other players that had major character concerns who are out of the league, who have done awful crimes against humanity. And we're trying to build a better world.
The Jeff Gladney stuff?
Yeah, we're trying to build a better world, Nick. So how do you do that with some of these crazy allegations and concerns, man? And it was just today that Deshaun Watson, there's that whole mess, and I don't want to get into it too much, but it's tough, Nick. It's tough to try to grade these guys in a world where you can't really meet them too much.
Yeah, I know. That was something that was really beneficial about covering the combine in 2017, talking with some scouts and some people there, like Malik. I always come back to Malik McDowell. Like, the talent he had was top 5, easy top 5 pick. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? Why are people like talking about him falling into the 20s and the 30s? It's like, listen, this guy does not get it. He has fights with his teammates. He has fights with coaches. And I don't think he's going to make it outside of his rookie contract. One scout told me that. And I don't even know if he ever played an NFL snap. He got in a snowmobile accident. I think he was caught robbing a grocery store afterwards or like a gas station. And so, it's a game of risk assessment, right? Like that's what the draft is, trying to limit the risks as best you can. And I think there's enough there with Micah Parsons in contrast to a very good top 100 linebacker class where it's like, it's just a little bit too much for me. I'll let somebody else take that chance. Me personally, that's me. That also speaks to how good I think the linebackers are day two. Like Baron Browning.
And that we agree. That we agree on.
Really good class.
And even deeper, we were talking about some linebackers, and I think it was one of our questions. It might have even been from Glenn Hauser, friend of the show, one of those MHRT guys, saying, who are some of your underrated prospects, right? And that like stole the show for you and I, because we're like, oh man, we love absolutely everybody. So that I will agree with you. It's a deep linebacking class, and the linebacker position is a position that the Broncos will address in the draft. I just don't know when.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like they have a bonus pick in the back pocket, right? Because they have Sternad coming in. Even if he's just a 5th round pick, that just count that as a 5th round pick that you're making this year and getting him on. So that's great. We got Todd Ostendorf coming in here. Todd, we always see you in the comment section. We really do appreciate you. You are one of the, Thanks, great contributors for us. And we see you. I see you, Todd. What about Gregory Rousseau? Gregory Rousseau is a really interesting case. He's kind of a guy that's like, where am I playing him? Right? Is he an edge rusher? Is he an interior defensive lineman? He probably needs to put on another 20 pounds, and he tested really poorly at the Miami Pro Day, especially in comparison to Jalen Phillips. He doesn't really know what he's doing out there. I think he came in as a safety. Now he's playing edge rusher. So he's one, middle of round 2. Sure, you can take a shot, but I don't think he is a first-round pick based on, and this is where it's kind of crazy. Like, oh, he had all these sacks. What about Jason Owa? You don't draft guys based on the stats. You draft guys based on the traits.
Yes, absolutely. And the content and the film. That's where you're going to pick up those traits. And 2 players that I've actually liked at the edge position too, and you and I have talked about, Jonathan Cooper and Wyatt Hubert, 2 edge players that I really like in round 6 or 7. Now I got Jim Nagy getting after me when Wyatt Hubert had his pro day, and I absolutely love this kid coming out of Kansas State. And someone asked me, where do you project him to go? And I said 6th, 7th, late round pick. I don't know if you saw Jim Nagy retweets me. He goes, not a late round pick. And I'm like, oh no, I've upset Jim, and Jim's a great guy, right?
I wish somebody would stand for me the way Nagy stands for all Senior Bowl players.
Right? I'm like, dude, this guy's the best ever, talking about supporting guys. But no, it's going to be interesting because we have a lot to build on the defense. And Nick, I mock, you mock, everybody mocks. I find myself mocking so many more defenders, and it's weird. It's weird to be doing that. But last year, go wide receiver. And that's kind of how we start to get to this point. So let's keep it.
CC as well. CC with the
I'm sorry.
And Daniel.
Sorry about that.
That was a good one. Just wanted to give a shout out. When you're, knock on wood, everybody, because your Wi-Fi has been holding up tight. But that was a point we were getting to after the Penn State Pro Day a couple Saturdays ago. And like Jason Owa, Daniel Hunter, George Payton, like their stars line. I called my shot. If the Broncos trade back, I think Owa is going to be a Bronco. I think that's the guy they're going to target.
That would excite me a lot. There's so many players I love in the 2nd round, Nick. There aren't enough picks. The Broncos don't have enough picks. I want them all. I want Baron Browning, Richie Grant. I want all these guys, man. These edge rushers we're talking about. And speaking of edge, a man that's always living life on the edge, Mundungus Creevy with the $4.99 super. What's going on, Mike? Hope you're doing well. Hope your dad's doing well. Why ain't anyone talking about the punters? They're the key to success. Yeah. $4.99 super brought to you by Mundungus, one of those MHRT cats. Mike, absolutely love it. Sam Martin, right? He's still our punter.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I had to make sure because, no disrespect to Sam Martin or anything, but special teams is tough. And I'll be real with you guys. So, Senior Bowl practice, I don't know how it is for you, Nick, but one thing that I've definitely learned in covering football in the last 4 years professionally is that when you're at practice, you get your tweeting and your notes and stuff like that really done during special teams. And that's not a slight, but you also find some prospects too. But every once in a while, I'm relying on Mundungus and Mike and our good friend here coming in B666 with Sam Martin was good though. And we'll take it.
Yeah, 100%.
We'll take it, I guess. If we're not talking about the punter, that's usually a good thing because we know Todd Sauerbrunn with those PEDs way back in the day, and then you got Marquette King trying to fight DMAC out there at training camp, and man, we don't need any problems with the punters. And then, our field goal kickers, we have a rich history there too, but it's tough, man. It's tough life for Bronco punter.
Yeah, and John, we had one from John Houston there as well, talking about. There we go, man. Everybody follow John on Twitter at JohnKMHH. You wouldn't be able to do here without him. Oh, he said, "Come on, let's talk about the question. Don't talk about me, John. We love you. You're
John.
great."
I'm gonna pull you on the screen here in a second, and you're gonna really pull your hair out, buddy. Oh, he's gone. He's gone.
Like whack-a-mole, gone. Okay, John Houston coming in. Who's a bigger medical concern, Jalen Phillips or Caleb Farley? Do you think some teams took Farley off their boards? Could he fall into the second? That's really up and different for each and every team, right? Like that's kind of the process of this, where some teams, it depends on one team's medical, right? Like, the concerns for Jalen Phillips and his concussions, that was a UCLA protocol thing. We're not worried about it going forward for the Broncos. Well, then he's going to be higher. Some other teams will be like, you know what, completely off our board. So it will be interesting to see where these guys go. I think both because of how talented they are, and both that play premium positions, arguably both the behind quarterback, edge rusher, or cornerback, either one. So I think they'll go the back end of the first round, but they're going to drop because of the medicals, and some teams are going to have them completely off their boards. Yeah, especially in this draft.
I agree with you. I think Caleb Farley has major concerns for me. It's not to say that Jalen Phillips doesn't, but Caleb Farley has. I mean, it's been Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain. Now you see Joe Horn's name coming up a lot. I love Joe. Or JC Horn, excuse me. Joe Horn's his dad. See, I'm screwing that up. I'm starting to become old. I'm going to be 30 soon, Nick. I mean, geez, give me a break, bud.
If you were a football player, I'd say it's time to replace you.
It's time to put me out to pasture. But no, Caleb Farley, it's tough. That back surgery that he had done, it's scary for a corner, especially a corner as athletic as him. I love him. I love his athleticism. The injuries are tough. So we're going to have to see, but second round, man, I don't know. I hope not. I hope not for his sake, for Caleb Farley at least, because
I would take a swing on either of those guys in the second round, though, because
I think I would too.
There's just obviously, you're going into it and like, oh, Jake Butt. Well, sometimes the pick right afterwards, the guy had medical concerns too. George Kittle, right? Like those guys can hit sometimes. And if either of those guys hit, you have a chance to have one of the top 10 at their position in the NFL. That's how good they are on tape. So second round for the Broncos, sign me up. But will they get there? I think some team in the back of the first will probably take a shot on both of them. Maybe earlier for Phillips, depending on the concussion.
I got a good question from a fan from in the chat here from Michael, and I'm going to try to pull it up here without screwing John up. And this is a great question as we were talking about linebackers, character concerns, and some of the evaluations of players and talent. So Michael's coming in with a question. Nick, would Micah Parsons be your number one if he did not have character concerns? So, of course, Michael asking you strictly off of a football analysis and what you know about Micah Parsons and what the film says. What do you make of the player?
Well, he still has a long ways to go as far as processing goes and reading his keys properly. But if you're looking for a guy that has the size to play the middle linebacker position on top of being a phenomenal athlete, I think he's pretty close to Devin White. I think Devin White showed more as a guy in space coming out. It's kind of like if you took Devin White the year before he came out, right? Because we missed that year of Micah Parsons tape. Right. Devin White really isn't a coverage linebacker, but he's a space neutralizer because if you get the ball out to the flats quickly, Devin White's coming. And if you're late with that ball, he's going to hurt somebody. So it's not really good. You're not matching up Devin White or Micah Parsons with Travis Kelce or Darren Waller in the slot. That's not their game. But they are space neutralizers and they are athletes in space, and that can be huge for limiting the quick pass game. So he would be my number one linebacker. It's just he plays a devalued position. I know everybody loves to romanticize the off-ball linebacker position, but like, what did the Rams' number one defense last year have at linebacker? Micah Kaiser? Like, who cares? You don't have to have that guy, but he would be my number one.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And we've got Jesse coming in here showing some love with a $5 super. Appreciate you so much, Jesse Edrick, in the house tonight. I believe the mere fact that George Paton has been in quarterback talks, whether it's been Stafford or Watson, means that Drew Lock is not the future. I want to see George Paton get his guy. Absolutely love it. Nick and Jesse, I'm going to ask you, who do we think this guy could be for George Paton? Because he's playing everything so close to the chest that Nothing is coming out of that building over there. Other teams are trading for quarterbacks, just like the Panthers did with Sam Darnold, and more moves are happening, but the quarterback room in Denver's staying the same. What do you think to Jesse's comment? Hey, they were in on the Stafford deal. You said it yourself, Nick. You believe it. I believe it. The whole world believes it. We know it's true. If you don't know it's true, then it's the spin. Stay away from the spin. But Watson, that's done. They're staying away from Watson right now. I listened to the whole 1 hour press conference today. Go listen for yourself. It's tough, man. It's tough, and that's all I want to say. But what do you make about Jesse's comment here? Who do you think George Paton's guy could be?
From what I gather, Shula is the guy that they're kind of leaving that stuff to right now. They're not taking Shermer as much into account for the quarterback evaluation. I mean, has Shermer even been there? It's been Shula, the guy who's been traveling there. And right. I think they would be happy about either Trey Lance or Justin Fields if the price is right to move up, or even if they have the chance to move up. There's a chance where this Mac Jones stuff is complete BS, and the quarterbacks go Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance, and you don't even have a chance to go up then. But your guys are gone. That's a possible reality. But I think they would be happy with either Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But it has to also be the price being right.
Here's a hot take for you. Pat Shermer will get fired next year and replaced by Mike Shula.
In season. I think there's a possibility of that for sure. I think that I definitely think that's possible, especially if they bring in Trey Lance.
Season. I hadn't even thought about that, Nick. In season. Okay, so we've got a rookie quarterback and the rookie's struggling. Change it with Shermer midseason and go to
Shula's the guy. Shula's the one who'd be working with that quarterback anyway. What can I do to make you feel comfortable? Talk to Quincy Avery. Talk to Beck, who's working with Justin Fields. What is this guy doing? What should we do? Go out there and do it.
Maybe don't talk to Quincy Avery after today. If you didn't see that press conference, there's something in there too with Deshaun Watson. So yeah, he's getting whole investigations coming out, man. It's crazy. Not trying to comment one way or another, but trying to keep it light and loose. But you heard it here first, Nick. I mean, you don't think that would be too much of a stretch, right? Going from Pat Shermer to Mike Shula finally being able to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL.
I mean, I know that the bridge collapsed in the 2015 Super Bowl, but that Panthers offense with Cam Newton that MVP season was pretty great before he took all the hits and his shoulder kind of fell off. And that was under Mike Shula. So I think there is an avenue there where you can take one of those quarterbacks and make it work. And I mean, honestly, I think independent of the quarterback situation, for me, Shermer's on the shit list. From what I've heard, get me Nick Foles, take Najee Harris at 9. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that word. I'm sorry, John. But Shermer, I think that's something the Drew Lock haters. I'm more of a lover of the top 4 quarterbacks in this class. And the Drew Lock truthers, or the truthers, if you will, can agree on. We do not like Pat Shermer, and Pat Shermer is a problem. So let's find common ground, guys. Let's find common ground. We don't like Pat Shermer.
No one likes Pat Shermer except Vic Fangio, and it's just because I don't know. I don't know why he's aligned himself to Pat Shermer, because he could care less about offense, I guess. But I don't think Peyton likes Shermer as much, from what I've gathered. I think that Shermer is on thin ice. Drew Lock and Pat Shermer, thin ice. Thin ice. Glenn Hauser knows about thin ice. Always walking on thin ice himself. $4.99 Super. Step Brothers 2, starring Nick Kendell and Malik McDowell.
Malik. I feel like you learn things, and it's kind of like Malik McDowell, and you kind of go one way or the other, right? Like, I love Malik McDowell coming out. Very talented. Character concerns. Didn't care. Freak athlete. And he's out of the league in a few years. I think I might also be projecting some of my Josh Rosen that I thought was a solid quarterback coming out on Mac Jones, right? Like, okay, well, quarterbacks with just an okay arm that are purely pocket dependent, I'm out. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. I can't think of the last pocket quarterback that was drafted early that has been a good quarterback in the NFL. It's Jared Goff and nothing over the last 5-6 years. So if they can't bring it with their legs, I don't think they're going to succeed in that growing curve that's required for a young quarterback to get to where they are, the Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, even though that if they're going to be that's like guys that are 40 years old that have been in the league for 20 years that have a wealth of knowledge that nobody will ever get.
I think the league is looking more for Josh Allen prototypical traits as opposed to like the old school, just Michael Vick run and go for it. More of Josh Allen, more Lamar Jackson, more, improvise when necessary, as opposed to just go for it if you don't like the play. And
it's like basketball. I'm not to do cross sports analogies are always great, but it's like point guards back in like John Stockton days, right? They're the pass first, quick distribute, finding the guys running the offense. Okay. I don't want that guy anymore. I need the guy who can shoot. I need the guy who can run the floor. I need the guy who can get into the paint. That's what quarterbacks are today. They have to be playmakers, and they have to be able to do things beyond the X's and O's. So that's why I'm just like Josh Rosen, Mac Jones, Dwayne Haskins. They're not for me. They're not for me. If you want to run that offense, by all means, I'll pass.
I'm excited to see what Mac Jones is going to do in the NFL. Whether or not he's with the Broncos, I'm going to keep an eye on him just because I'm curious. But Gavin's in the house with the $5 super. Appreciate you so much, Gavin. Of course, rocking it out with George Payton, sitting there looking like an OG gangster. After watching the Super Bowl and Levante David knocking down Travis Kelce, we need an elite linebacker.
I would argue this 10,000 times, but watching that game, you see the linebackers. Yes, that's great. But what I see is 4 guys absolutely destroying the Chiefs' offensive line and harassing Patrick Mahomes. And I think that is far more important than the speed of the linebacker position that they had. Being able to get pressure with 4, that makes everything right. And if the Broncos can do that, this defense has a chance to be special this year. You need depth on the back end as well, but you need quality in the pass rush.
I would just hate to see Vic Fangio go his entire Denver tenure without having like an athletic linebacker. No disrespect to the Alexander Johnson, T-Rex dinosaur dance fans or the outlaw Josie Jewell, who I really like. I like both of them a lot, but they're born in the wrong generation, unfortunately. And I'd love to see an upgrade there, but you and I both, I love the second round. You love the second round. There are also some linebackers in the mid rounds. So keep an eye on that, Broncos country. But speaking of Broncos country, we got Mark with a $4.99 super. Appreciate you so much for joining the show, Mark. Thank you for your donation. Daniel Jeremiah, Nick, a friend of everyone in the NFL community. He's a god, a pariah, right? Daniel Jeremiah just released a new mock. Has us taking Penei Sewell at 9 overall. I like the pick. What are your thoughts?
If the Broncos aren't going to trade back, I think Sewell is probably as good as you could hope. I'm actually really close between Sewell or Slater. It comes down to scheme fit for me, and the Broncos run more inside zone and gap. I think Sewell is better for that. If they were running outside zone, the Shanahan offense, I would prefer Slater. But that's not what they're running. So Sewell at 9 would be fine. However, everything's about the quarterback, right? I mean, we said this 10,000 times. So if a team like the Vikings are offering like a 2022 second round pick and pick 14 to come up and get Penei Sewell, I'll trade back and give myself more assets to be aggressive and flexible pursuing that quarterback, depending on which way the wind blows for Drew Lock this season. But I mean, Sewell at 9, that's about as good of an outcome for a non-quarterback you could have picking at 9 in this draft. The only one that would be better would be Kyle Pitts, but I don't think there's a reality where he falls to 9.
I love the question, Mark. That's a very realistic question, and I'm seeing some mocks where Penei Sewell is falling, and that's bizarre. But Nick, I want to ask you, and as we start to wrap up the show real quick, I mean, so okay, the Broncos take Penei Sewell. Let's say that's the scenario, and then what? Garrett Bowles is your left tackle, and then you just move over Penei Sewell to the right tackle. I hesitate. Because why are you going to take a man that does his craft so well and just falter? Didn't we just see that with Elijah Wilkinson? I mean,
I wouldn't call them the same. Penei Sewell,
I'm not calling them the same, but that's the same treatment. You're asking him to play in a position that's not natural for him. Can he do it? Sure, but I don't know. I mean, at that point, I would, dare I say, consider moving Garrett, the GB zone, over there. I don't know.
I think you're more likely to get a better outcome moving Sewell, who's not even 21 years old yet, to the right tackle position than Garrett Bowles, who is much more comfortable at left tackle. I think Sewell, you can mold him either way. And one of the big calling cards for Slater is that he can play all 5 positions, right? You have to be able to cross train. So I think that's not really a worry for me with Penei Sewell. I think you put him at right tackle. Again, he's not going to be 21 until October this year. He's going to figure it out. I'm not that worried about it. He's somebody also where it's not like his technique at left tackle falls off a cliff, or he's winning because of his technique at left tackle. He's winning because he's a great athlete and huge and just destroying guys, right? Like, so it's not like the technique has to be like, oh, we're worried about it falling off the cliff. It needs to be built up either way he plays. So if it's at right tackle left, I don't care. Like, it needs to work. That's the reason that there's a conversation between Slater and Sewell, is because Sewell is so raw with a lot of his pass sets.
Also, like, is it Eichenberg out of Notre Dame in the second round? Liam Eichenberg. I like him at tackle.
Sub 33-inch arms. That's a killer.
Second round though.
I don't think there's a single starting tackle in football that has sub 33-inch arms right now.
Okay,
so that concerns me. I really like Tevin Jenkins. Spencer Brown is an option. Maybe Deontay Smith is an option. There are options day 2. Walker Little. is an option. But once I think Eichenberg measured in 32 and 3/4 inch arm length. Somebody can correct me in the chat. But that's just like a, man, you're such an anomaly. I don't know what to do with you. You might be a fine guard, but you have way less value if you're a guard than a tackle.
Speaking of value, one of our good friends, Dehan, with a $10 super, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Can you imagine the running lanes on the right side if Penny Sewell or Jenkins paired with Mutai? Gonna make some running backs look like generational talents. Okay, here's the thing with Moody, right? Everybody wants Moody to play. Graham Glasgow, what does that mean for Graham Glasgow? I mean, is this a position battle that's potentially up for grabs at the right guard position in training camp?
I think every single person besides Garrett Bowles probably needs to earn their spot back this season. Nobody was good enough last year where I'm putting them in pen, and you're going to need to get the best 5 out there. That's why it's so important for these guys to be cross-trained these days, is because you need to be able to put the best 5 out there, and injuries are going to happen, so you're going to have to reshuffle it. There's no way the Broncos are making it through the season with the same starting 5 on the offensive line as they end the season. It's just not going to happen. So whether, what are we going to do about Moody or Glasgow or Cushenberry? There's going to be a reshuffling at some point. I'm not worried about it. The depth is going to have to show out. And if one of let's say Glasgow gets injured, Moody comes in and is dominant, and not just in the run game, but the pass game as well, fantastic. We're rolling forward. But I think that's a good problem to have. I'm not overthinking it. Just let the best guys play.
Let the best guys play. And as we talk Graham Glasgow, some treats coming up for Mile High Huddle in the near future. Just want to leave it at that. And everyone loves a good tease. So everybody stay tuned. John's got some, he's always up to no good, that guy. And when that guy's up to no good, things tend to happen. So we're starting to wrap up. Want to get to a few more takes before the show is completely over. And we've got John Houston with a 199 super coming in. Appreciate you so much. Nick, what do you think of Spencer Rattler for 2022?
He is extremely toolsy. He's really natural. The ball pops out of his hands. He can do a lot of the off-platform stuff. If anybody's seen the show QB1, he does not come off good. And I don't know, like you want your quarterback to be good, but he's one where you're kind of a little bit nervous about him being kind of a Johnny Manziel type. Now things can change, right? He can grow up. He was benched this last year because of some of the issues that he has from a maturity standpoint. If there wasn't the maturity questions, he'd easily be quarterback 1 just because of the traits that he has. But that's there, and I don't think that's going to go away. And that's going to be, if the Broncos don't have a quarterback next year, or the Drew Lock doesn't turn out to be the guy, that's going to be the conversation where it's going to be like, oh, how many times can we talk about Spencer Rattler and his character concerns? But, it is what it is. They won't be answered until they are definitively answered.
It's crazy, Nick. It's crazy. Just like this hour has flown by. I appreciate it again, man. I absolutely love rapping football with you guys, and especially in the middle of the week on a Tuesday night. So many thanks to Carl too, but I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, Nick. I mean, that's where we are in this draft process right now. It's absolutely crazy when you wake up and you check your phone. I check mine throughout the middle of the night trying to figure out what's going on. And it's that time of year, man. It's absolute craziness. I do not know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, Broncos could trade up at 4. Broncos could trade up to 5. Broncos could trade back. Either way, it's exciting times. What is it? I pulled up the NFL draft countdown. 16 days, 22 hours, 53 minutes, and 30 seconds until the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. And Trevor Lawrence will end up being a Jag. They're not even hiding it anymore. But we'll see what happens. We do appreciate it. Doesn't look like there's any more supers, so you stop me if there are any, but I'm going to get to the outro. I got the horn here if any last-minute ones do come in, but that's going to do it for Mile High Insiders this week, guys. You can find Luke on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP, and you can find myself at Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you find John on Twitter at John K MHH. That's JONKAY MHH. Guys, also make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com for all of our written content and the MHH community content. I'm in the midst of a move, so I have not been writing as much as I typically like to do. But that's life. So hopefully we'll get on that here before the draft. The big move.
Boy's been writing. I got us covered. Don't even worry. You could head on over to milehighhuddle.com. Check out my latest. I had one article drop today, one drop last night also. So get on over to milehighhuddle.com. I had to jump in there for that plug.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. You got to represent yourself. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. Like, subscribe, and share if you're joining us on YouTube. And a lot of Facebook comments as well today. If you guys are joining us on Facebook, click those thumbs up. I see that we're at 38 right now. Maybe let's get to 39. That's a good number. Maybe even 40. We'll see. But just, click those thumbs up if you're joining us, and like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. Doing so can really help us continue to bring you this content And guys, whether that be you think that Drew Lock's the greatest and you want to tell us that we're wrong, or you think Drew Lock struggles and he's you want to move on, you know what? Either way, bring it on. Let's talk. If we all have the same opinion, this would be so flippin' boring. Difference of opinions, the spice of life. So let's bring it. Let's have a good, educated conversation. Let's not resort to ad hominem, and hopefully we'll all be better for it. But doing so can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. And also follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at MHI_football pod. This Saturday, MHI will be taking a break as Building the Broncos will be filling in this Saturday. Carl needed time off because he was coming off of his Easter madness as the pastor. Obviously, it was a busy weekend for him. But Carl and I will be back. I got face recognition.
Glenn Hauser coming in here with the $4.99. Play that horn. Letting it drop. Glenn Hauser. I knew those MHRT guys. One of them would do it. Absolutely knew it. Glenn, a huge supporter of the show. You guys, thank you so much. This was absolutely awesome. He's Nick Kendell. He's John. I'm Luke saying thank you. Good night, Broncos country. And go Broncos.